parent in our neighborhood kept punishing other kids for corrupting her son until security footage exposed everything. I moved into the neighborhood thinking it was the safest place I had ever seen a child grow up in. It was quiet, organized, and almost too perfect. That changed the moment I met Mrs. Halden and her son Ethan. They lived 2 houses down from me. Ethan was a quiet kid, maybe 11 or 12. He never played outside with the others. He just stood at the window sometimes, watching. At first, I thought he was just shy. Then the incident started. A bicycle tire slashed overnight, a mailbox smashed in, a backpack stolen and found in a drainage ditch. Every time, Mrs. Halden reacted the same way. She blamed the neighborhood kids. She said they were corrupting her son, and she made sure everyone paid for it. I remember the first meeting she called with the parents. She was shaking with anger. She said her son was being targeted by bad influence kids, and she demanded consequences. Some parents pushed back, but she had this calm certainty that made people uncomfortable, like she already knew the truth. A week later, one of the kids got suspended. That was the first real crack in the neighborhood. Things escalated fast after that. More incidents kept happening, each one worse than the last, and each time Mrs. Halden was ready with a name. Usually the same 3 boys, kids who suddenly became troublemakers overnight. But something felt off to me, because the timing never made sense. Incidents always happened when adults were inside, never when cameras from the street could clearly see, just outside angles, just blind spots. I started paying attention after the 3rd complaint meeting. I noticed Ethan never spoke during any of them. He just looked down at the floor, like none of it involved him. That bothered me more than anything else. Because if your life is being destroyed, you don't sit that still. You react, unless you already know what's coming. One night I heard glass break outside. It was around 2 a.m. I looked out my window immediately. Nothing, no kids, no movement, just Mrs. Halden's porch light flickering. The next morning she was already outside, pointing at the house across the street, saying she had seen one of them run away, but I had been awake and I had seen nothing. That was the first time I felt something was wrong, not just strict parenting, something deeper, something controlled. I started talking to other neighbors, quietly, carefully, and I found something strange. Everyone had a slightly different version of events, but all of them matched one thing. Mrs. Halden always saw the incident. No one else ever did. That inconsistency stuck with me, because in real incidents, witnesses overlap, but here it was always isolated perception, like each event was happening in a bubble. Then one afternoon, I noticed something else. Ethan never had friends come over. Not even once. But the neighborhood kids used to play together before Mrs. Halden moved in. After she arrived, that stopped completely. It wasn't just blame, it was isolation. Intentional or not, it was working. I decided to watch more closely. I installed a small camera facing the street from my window. I didn't tell anyone, I just needed to understand what was going on. The next incident came 3 days later. A garden statue shattered in Mrs. Halden's yard. She screamed loud enough for half the street to hear. By morning, she was accusing the same kids again. But this time I had footage, or at least I thought I did. I reviewed it carefully. Nothing showed up. No kids, no movement, just static darkness during the exact window of time that made no sense. I checked the angle, recalibrated it. Everything was fine, but the footage from that night looked edited, not by me. That's when I felt something shift, like I was no longer just observing a problem. I was inside it. I told one other neighbor, Mr. Ravel, about the footage. He looked uneasy immediately. He said I should be careful, because Mrs. Halden had already accused him once of letting kids gather at night. He swore he hadn't seen anything, but he stopped talking after that. That silence was loud. The next week, something worse happened. A window at Ethan's house was broken from the inside. That detail mattered because it wasn't thrown from outside. It shattered. Outward, Mrs. Halden claimed a rock had been thrown in, but the glass pattern said otherwise. I started writing everything down after that. Times, angles, weather, anything that might connect, and a pattern slowly appeared. Every incident happened on nights when Mrs. Halden's house lights went out for exactly 12 to 15 minutes. Then came back on, always the same gap, always consistent, too consistent. That's when I decided to set up something better. A second camera, one hidden, pointing directly at her backyard, not the street, her property. I told myself it was just for clarity, but deep down I already knew I was crossing a line. The night I installed it, Ethan was standing in the window again, watching me. But this time he didn't look away, he just stared, like he knew what I was doing. 2 nights later, another incident happened. This time it was graffiti on a neighbor's fence. Same accusations, same kids, same anger, but my hidden camera caught something. At first it looked like nothing, just darkness. Then movement near the side of the house. Small, careful, the figure was hard to see. But it wasn't a kid, it was too slow, too deliberate. I zoomed in frame by frame and my stomach dropped. It was Mrs. Halden. She was outside her own house at 2:17 a.m. holding something in her hand, spray paint. She moved across the fence quietly and wrote the graffiti herself. I froze because this wasn't negligence. It was fabrication, but then something even worse happened. The footage glitched for about 5 seconds. When it returned, she was already back inside, like the recording had skipped. I replayed it again and again, same result. That missing gap felt intentional, like someone had touched the system. I didn't sleep that night. I just kept thinking about Ethan, about how he never reacted, about how he always looked exhausted in the mornings, about how he never once defended the kids being blamed. The next day I went to his school pickup area. I watched from a distance. Mrs. Halden was there early. She stood very close to Ethan, too close, like she was guarding him from air itself. I saw him glance at another kid, just a normal glance, but she pulled him away instantly, whispering something sharp. His shoulders dropped immediately. That moment stayed with me because it didn't look like discipline. It looked like control through fear. That night I showed the footage to Mr. Ravel. He went pale. He told me I should delete it, not because it was wrong, but because people like her don't just stop. I asked him what he meant. He didn't answer. He just said she used to work in something technical, something involving systems. He wouldn't elaborate. That was the first time I realized this might be bigger than neighborhood drama. The next incident broke everything open. A kid's bike was found burned near the edge of the street. Everyone exploded. Parents demanded police involvement. Mrs. Halden was the loudest voice in the room. She cried while pointing at the same 3 boys, but this time I didn't trust anything she said. That night I set up live monitoring. 2 cameras, continuous feed. No breaks, I wasn't going to miss anything again. At 1:48 a.m., the feed flickered slightly. I watched carefully. Nothing seemed wrong at first. Then Ethan appeared outside, alone, walking slowly. He stopped near the driveway and looked back at the house like he was waiting. The front door opened. Mrs. Halden came out, and for the first time I saw them together outside at night. She handed him something, a small object. He hesitated, then took it. My heart started pounding, because whatever was happening, it wasn't random. It was coordinated. He walked toward the street, stopped near the neighbor's yard, and placed the object down, then left. I couldn't see clearly what it was, but I knew it wasn't something a random kid would carry. Then I rewound the footage from earlier and saw Mrs. Halden preparing it inside, calmly, methodically, like she had done it many times before. That was the moment everything collapsed. It wasn't the neighborhood kids, it was staged. Every single incident, but I still didn't understand why, until I watched Ethan's face again. There was no joy, no rebellion, only exhaustion, like he was following instructions he couldn't refuse. The final confirmation came when I checked older footage from weeks before I moved in, something I shouldn't have had access to, but the camera system auto-saved shared neighborhood angles, and I found a pattern. Mrs. Halden had been doing this since day one. Different objects, different targets, same outcome. Blame always outward, control always inward. Then came the final recording, the one that changed everything. Ethan wasn't just participating. He was learning, copying her movements, practicing like it had been taught, like it had been normalized. That's when I understood the real horror. This wasn't about protecting him. It was about shaping him, turning isolation into identity. The police were finally called after I submitted everything anonymously. When they arrived, Mrs. Halden acted calm, too calm, until they showed her the footage. That's when her face changed. Not anger, not fear, recognition, like she had been waiting to be caught. Ethan didn't speak. He just sat on the stairs, watching everything fall apart, and then something unexpected happened. He smiled, not at anyone, not in relief, just quietly, like the end of something long planned. Mrs. Halden was taken that night. No resistance, no denial, just silence. But the last thing she said before leaving still haunts me. She looked at Ethan and said, "Now you'll finally understand what they are." No one asked her what she meant, because no one wanted the answer. After that, the neighborhood changed overnight, but not in the way we expected. Ethan stopped going to school for a while, then he returned, quieter than before, more observant, less afraid, which was the strangest part, because fear should have been the outcome, not adaptation. A week later, I checked the cameras again, just out of habit. One of them had been reset, manually, from inside the system, and the last file was renamed by Ethan's login. That's when I realized the final truth wasn't what she did. It was what she built, and I still don't know if we stopped it in time.